Recording and go. All right.
All right, this is the first session we're going to have on the structure group, it's called. And the idea has arisen to make this a subject in its own right. As I mentioned in yesterday's lecture, it's something that, believe it or not, to me it's just astounding that structure is not a science in its own right. It's always based on the structure of what? It's dependent on something else. So I thought that here in the beginning we ought to begin with trying to assemble what are the basic tenets of structure and look for the most universal principles and try to establish structure as a standalone science, the way mathematics is a standalone science that is applicable to all disciplines in science. I think structure has that same capability, and it's going to be a little hard to separate between what we mean by mathematical structure and what we mean by the structures of natural form. Now, I'd like to get a little consensus here to do we agree that it is possible to understand structure as a thing in its own right? How many think that's actually possible? Okay, good.
In fact, there's already a philosophy called structuralism.
Structuralism. Yeah.
It was famous in the 70s.
Yeah, but that's a school of philosophy.
Yeah.
He's talking about, excuse me, but as I understand, what he's talking about is just plain structure, not the idea that every science has a similar structure, which I think what structuralism says everything is basically alike in some fundamental way, whereas he's just talking about what is structure. And maybe I'm way, I shouldn't have interrupted you. I'm
No,
sorry,
no.
but I don't like structuralism. That's why.
I don't like it either. I'm telling you that it existed. So these people consider the wrong percent.
Yes, we had last year someone present a paper that brought up the history of science, and structuralism was one of the schools of thinking. But that's the way, let's have this meeting as everyone sharing it anytime they feel so inspired. And it's not a lecture, it's a conversation. So that's what we're trying to do. And I'm just going to bring up some bullet points to kind of guide the discussion along. But everyone else, feel free to bring forward your observations on structure. Maybe later as we develop, we'll see that there's enough that we can actually start putting this down and organizing it. So I'm going to throw out an idea, and then let's discuss it and move along in that way. One of the bases of structure, as I see it, is that our culture has developed from the point of view of looking at structure as the result of parts interacting and to produce a whole. And that line of thinking of starting with the parts and ending with the whole, I see as first problem and finally non-productive an approach. And if we're talking about trying to understand what structure is and ever get to the point of unification. And again, I'm interested to know if that point of view is the operating, do you feel it's the proper operating mechanism for understanding structure, or would its inverse be more applicable, which is the whole produces the parts and we understand how the parts come about and perform only in relation to the whole in which they exist. So, again, just to get a feel for how people are thinking, who favors parts make the whole, and who favors whole make the parts? Just to make it simple. The first one is parts make the whole. We have a show of hands who agree with that.
I think. I'm not sure.
Okay, and who would be more inclined to agree that the whole generates the parts? Again, we're split on that one, okay? And the other neutral, but don't forget the neutral.
Yeah, that would be really.
Can I go back and say something about the existence of structures? I firmly believe that there is a structure to everything. Whether we can say where it came from or where it's going, that's another question. That's why we're here, sort of. But
all right, in other words, structure is inescapable.
I believe, this is just my belief, that everything must have a structure.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the small structures have to build up to the large structure, I think that's absolutely essential for a large structure to exist. But we're conditioned because of biology that we understand that a large structure will give rise to a small structure. So we're really conditioned to something that's probably unusual in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Now,
Yes.
the view that the piecemeal view of reality, which is called the analytical method, was created by Descartes. I mean, it was not created by Descartes. It was promoted uniquely by Descartes because the ancient philosophers knew the difference between synthesis and analysis. Analysis to put things apart, synthesis to put them together.
Mm-hmm.
But Descartes, imitating the mathematical method, said that we have to go piecemeal.
Mm-hmm.
So ever since, physics used the very simple approach with the little massless card and then put more complications. So they built up models from nothing to complexity
Mm-hmm.
using the Cartesian method.
Okay.
But then you miss the sense of the whole. That's the problem with Descartes.
Okay.
And I don't want to steal the lecture, but this is
It's not a
very,
lecture, it's a discussion.
No,
this is very much the essence of natural philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
To distinguish that the same word has different meanings. Aristotle called analogical meanings. Each one is valid, but Descartes want to have a univocal meaning for everything, like mathematics. 4 is 4. Square root of 3 is that there's no analogy. But in natural philosophy, like in all philosophy, you cannot be that uniquely univocal. You have to be analogical. So you can understand the same term at different dimensions of more complication or less.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hierarchy, in other words, in the forms.
Mm-hmm.
In the word of forms or structure, there's a hierarchy always. And Descartes, for example, Descartes would think that animals are just machines. He doesn't believe in anything between matter and soul.
Mm-hmm.
Either you are a thinking thing, res cogitans, or you are a res extensa, a pure extension.
Mm-hmm.
So actually he killed not only the animals, he killed matter also. Because matter is not definable in terms of pure math. You see? He was about to banish the concept of force from Newtonian mechanics, but somebody came with the calculus equation and said, okay, let's accept the concept of force. That's the culture you're talking about. We are the sons of Descartes.
Yeah.
Okay?
I wanted to,
John,
yes.
Yeah.
actually, I'm not sure this is on topic yet, but I want to pose this question before I forget it. And perhaps you'll get to it. And basically the question is, I'm hoping we can use structure to decide whether the ether is a solid or a gas.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's a solid, but if it is a gas, I'll deal with it.
Okay, that's a good point. The idea that my approach to this is in trying to understand what structure is.